Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Things class slash conversation slash chat session, I guess. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service in Hernando County. And with me this evening is April Spence, who's the director of Hernando County Homesteading Incorporated. Good
Yeah,
evening, April. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. We're gonna have some
Boy,
fun.
Hernando County Homesteading Incorporated. That sounds like official now, doesn't it?
It is. We actually turned ourselves into a nonprofit. The goal is to support people who want to do homesteading in their own, backyards. And homesteading encompasses so many things, but gardening has been a big topic in the homesteading group, food, forests, and gardening. And we'd love to be able to eventually raise money and get grant funding to be able to offer like micro grants for people to start their own gardens. I want to get started, but it's not cheap to get started in a garden. So
No, it's not. The price of everything has gone up.
it really has. And, for the first couple of years, your yield in a garden isn't going to be enough to accommodate or to save from what you buy in a grocery store. Like
Mhm.
even just after a few years, my own garden, which is pretty advanced, I think, if we get 10% of our food supply from our garden, it's helpful, but it's a growing process. So to put all that money out ahead of time, as a means to save for my family is going to take some time. So if we can help people with that, we want to try. So
Yeah, it really is a process. And, what we do here at Extension is we're here to help answer people's questions, give classes, give them direction. A lot of times I'll have people, experts in the area that we're talking about, come in and do the class. I've had experts on working with commercial growers of sweet potatoes, teach how to grow sweet potatoes. And just yesterday, I started harvesting my sweet potatoes. I've got a big pile of them already, and I'm only like a little part of the way through digging them up at this point. So it's a process. It takes practice, but we're here to help. I know you're here to help also. So if anybody's not too familiar with what you do, Hernando County Homesteading is also a Facebook group that people can join.
it is. It actually started as a Facebook group. Again, myself and my husband started homesteading our property probably about 2 years ago. And what that looked like for us was, what, let's start a garden where we can, pull food to feed our family and we know what we're putting into it. Like we're not using fertilizers, we're not using pesticides. So like we want to know what our family's eating. So we became starting to become more healthy. And it turned into creating a couple food forest areas in our yard and backyard rabbits and using them for fertilizer. And then it turned into vermicomposting and canning. And I mean, general composting, soil
Mhm.
remediation, all these things. And I said, you know what, there's got to be other people in my own community that want to do the same thing. And why not learn from them? And maybe they can learn something from our experience. So I started this Facebook group. It just turned a year, I believe. And we're
Mhm.
over 2,000 people right in Hernando County because we limit
That's great.
it. Yeah. And everybody's sharing and it's positive. I've learned a ton. And I know that, when you get to learn from people in your own community, it means that you're not making the same mistakes as them because you're learning from their mistakes, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to learn how to grow food from somebody that lives in Miami, different zone, different climate, different everything. So if I can keep it in Hernando County, then I have a better chance of succeeding, which is going to keep me doing it longer, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's great to do it local because the conditions here are local with a lot of the different classes that we teach. And really, since the beginning of COVID, I saw just a huge increase in the interest in people becoming more sustainable, growing more fruits and vegetables, being able to raise farm animals, keeping bees, hydroponics, everything, the whole gamut. Everybody, there's just a huge spike in interest in that. So we tried to accommodate that by having a lot more classes on a variety of those things. But with a lot of my classes, I'll have people join in from all over the state. We did a class just recently on I can't remember exact growing vegetables in containers.
Mm.
I had somebody from South Dakota on the class. I said, well, your weather is really, really different than here in Hernando County, but the principles are kind of the same. The timing is very different, but you can grow stuff in containers out there also. So I think they got something out of it, but it's great that we have, kind of nationwide reach, but a lot of the information has to be local because growing in Miami is different from here, different from Jacksonville. It's all different. Let me go
Yeah.
ahead and mention to everybody, if you have a question, if you have a comment, go ahead and put it in the comments. Corey, who is one of our regular followers on our Thursday morning virtual plant clinic, asked, is this the chat where you can see us? No, Corey, this is not the one where we let the viewers in the chat room with us. We do that about once a year. We could do that again in the future, I guess. That way they can join in and we can actually see them when they're asking their questions.
That'd
So
be
if you have
cool.
any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll go ahead and do our best to answer your questions.
Perfect. You mentioned something, getting people from South Dakota and that kind of thing. One of my favorite, I'm going to call him a practical gardener, is David the Good. And he's not even in Florida anymore. He's in Alabama, but so much of his information is relevant, because it's about soil remediation and natural fertilizers and, creating canopies with plants, all this stuff. So I love him as an author and a YouTuber, and I get so much inspiration from him and learn a lot. And he's not in my direct community, so it does help. But being local with all these 2,000 people on the group, we get to trade things too, right? And so someone who's having backyard chickens can say, "Hey, I got a few extra dozen. Anybody need them?" Well, that's amazing, right? I've gotten lots of different starters from people on the group. We've exchanged seeds on the group. We even have seed swaps a couple times a year, which is really nice. And we have seed boxes that have come from the group. So we have 3 locations where people can go at any time and get free seeds. Hopefully leave some as well to swap. But it's kind of exciting that people are just excited and interested about it. Our ancestors have done this kind of stuff, homesteading, for so long, and we're consumed with technology and the day to day that we're losing that art, and our families aren't seeing it. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm sure if we do have anybody watching this evening, since the topic we chose was about growing edibles in your homeowners association, they're probably thinking like, oh gosh, I wish that I could have a homestead and a food forest and grow my own food. But I live in a nice community with a homeowners association, and they don't let me do that. It's against the laws.
Yeah.
So I have a couple suggestions about things that you can do. And one of them, April kind of beat me to it because she's asking, what's the best place to purchase herbs for container gardening? And I was going to mention container gardening is a great way to start to grow a little bit of food, some herbs, spices, a little bit of odds and ends. It doesn't take much room. It doesn't really stand out. I mean, I wouldn't put my herb garden in huge containers in the middle of my front yard. If I was in a homeowners association, neighbors going to notice that. But your back porch, back patio, out by the pool, lanai, I have seen very, very attractive racks and stands that you put up against the wall, pots in. And if you go to big box stores or lawn and garden centers, pots used to all be made out of clay, and they were, if you had a big one, it was really, really heavy. You fill it with dirt and you can't move it. Pots these days come in, they're big, they're small, they're huge, they're different colors. If you're craftier than I am and more artistic, you can actually have the colors match. I'm not very good with matching colors. And, make everything kind of come together in an outdoor garden area and grow herbs. Herbs are probably about the easiest thing to start with in containers. Mm-hmm. So where would be a good local place to buy herbs for container gardening?
So my suggestion absolutely is local farmers markets. If you're in Hernando County, we've got a great one that happens every Saturday up on US 19 across from Timber Pines. And there's a Growing Crazy Acres, Miss Desiree, who's up there, and she has wonderful starters, vegetables and herbs, all organic, and also seeds, but she's a knowledge base for getting your garden started. So I definitely recommend them. Our Hernando County homesteading group, we have a lot of people who overdo starters. I think a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
gardeners do that, like you plant, 20 starters, but you really can only put 5 in the ground because you don't have space for everything. And so all
yeah.
those overages, a lot of times they're trading. I know personally, I do clippings from some of my plants, and I'll talk about some of my plants as we go, but like my longevity spinach, it is such a gem. And someone gave me a starter of longevity spinach. And so mine has gotten so big that I do clippings and I propagate them myself and give them to people all the time. So in our group, we have a lot of that trading that happens. So definitely find a group like that in your area and you can do some trades. Are you still there, Dr. Lester? It seems like you're frozen. Can you guys see me? Okay, it looks like Dr. Lester got kicked off. He'll probably rejoin us back. So he was talking about container gardening, and I have some great ideas, I think, for an HOA. Obviously, you want to look at your HOA rules and see what fits in, but I'm not really a rule follower, and that's probably why I love David the Good, who's one of my favorite gardeners and food forest entrepreneurs. But what I love to do is I love container gardening where I have those metal troughs. And I've seen landscapes done where they do a rock bed around the metal trough. So the metal trough is actually your container. Think of it like your island in your front yard. And then they can put rocks or logs on the outside of it to cover the metal. I've even seen people do lath and then put like stones that match the front of their house, or they'll plant really thick shrubbery around the container so it masks that container. The one thing I noticed with container gardening is it definitely needs more watering than in-ground gardens. So be very aware of that when you're doing your landscape. But I absolutely love growing in containers. It helps with the weeds. It helps with the bugs. We get moles in our yard sometimes. And so by being in the container, there's a lot less chance of them getting into it. So definitely containers is a great way to go. Another option, our local Lowe's has these they're plastic barrels that look like, are you back, Dr. Lester? We lost you
Yeah,
for a
I am.
minute.
My internet crashed hard.
It gave us a chance to talk bad about you. No, I'm just kidding. We wouldn't do
Well,
that.
that's fine. Looks like you didn't really miss me all that much. You got it covered.
We talked a little bit more about container gardening. I gave them a tip about, you could put those metal troughs in as almost like an island and then cover the outside, do stone beds on the outside, or you could even put lath up and do some stucco to match your house, or do stones to match your home, or really thick shrubbery around the outside, right? So it masks that container. And that's just a thought. It depends on your HOA, but there's lots of creative things we can do to hide those containers.
And here, I can show you an example. It's the background, and I'll turn both of us off for just a second so everybody can see this. But this is over at the Sumter County Extension Office, and they have a demonstration garden there. You'll see the vegetable garden in the background. They have a beautiful herb garden, and when I took these pictures, they had a lot of herbs. So here, let me turn both of us off. And you can see the beautiful herb garden there, built out of rocks. And you can go as expensive and as attractive as you like, or try to find less expensive ways of doing it. But that is essentially a great big container to grow a huge full herb garden in, and it's a great place to start.
And it almost looks like they use maybe cinder blocks and then put the stone on the outside, and I see a lot of people using cinder blocks for containers because they're pretty inexpensive to use and they hold up for a long time. But I definitely love the idea of doing herbs in a container garden. I think you can grow herbs in a lot of things. Like, for example, I've got some of those metal hangers. A lot of times they come up with a pole in the center and then they've got the 2 prongs that hang, and you've got a planter that hangs from them. Great place to do flowers, great place to do herbs. I think you can get creative and trick your homeowners association. Hopefully there's no presidents on here, homeowners presidents, but
Yeah. Hope they're not listening in. But if you have a place where you can put up hanging baskets, there are varieties of tomatoes and peppers that are bred where the plant stays naturally small, but they're still very, very productive. And they were
absolutely.
kind of basically bred for hydroponic production and
Mhm.
also for growing in pots and hanging baskets. So
Definitely.
if you grow a great big full tomato plant in a hanging basket, it's going to hang all the way to the ground, and you're going to have problems. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of varieties that you can get seeds for and grow that are going to stay small.
Yeah, and when we think containers, we have to be creative and not just think like not just have in our mind one thing. Because I've seen many communities that I've driven in. I had to walk a lot of doors at one time, soliciting, and I would see in these homeowners associations where people would have like the clay pots that they're partially tipped to look like water's coming out of them, and
Uh-huh.
and people plant in containers in neighborhoods all the time. It's what they're planting in the containers that this is kind of about, right? Like, how do
Yeah.
you stop planting just ornamentals that don't have an environmental impact and not edible, obviously, and start planting things that are edible, things that you can consume for your family? So I think that's why we started this, right? This conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. To give people ideas. Let's see, we got another question or two here.
Okay.
Annette is asking, what is the name of your Facebook group?
So it's called Hernando County Homesteading. You can find it on Facebook. One of the questions is, do you live in Hernando County? Again, we do want to keep it very localized. There's so many spammers on social media right now that we're going to get people from China that just wants to steal people's information or whatever, or hack the group. So it's very personalized to Hernando County. We do check to make sure people live in the area. I don't know of any in other communities, but I'd be willing to start one. I love adminning this page. So if there's someone in Pasco that wants to reach out to me that wants one, I'd be willing to help them admin it and give them tips. And, the more we can spread this information, the better.
There you go.
And
And
that's me.
oh, okay. That's you. Oh my
I do
gosh, you're
marketing.
scamming us now, huh?
Yeah, I do marketing, and I had to sign into a YouTube, and it happened to be one of my clients. So that is me.
Okay. What I was thinking earlier about some kind of tips and tricks for people who live in HOAs, just little things that you can do to actually replace a non-productive, and I hate to say non-productive because you can have plants out there that look attractive. Unfortunately, a lot of times in HOAs, when the builders come through and build the houses and build the neighborhood out, with the landscaping, you get what you get, and a lot of times it's not very exciting, and it's
Mhm.
kind of on the boring side, even from an ornamental point of view. But one thing that a lot of people end up with in their front yards is different types of ornamental grasses. African iris is a very popular one, and it is a clump grass, and it'll flower usually every summer for a few weeks. Other than that, it's just kind of a clump of green grass, so
Yeah.
nothing all that special. Let me go ahead and dig up my picture here. Something you could very easily replace that with that grows like a weed here in Florida. I have some in my backyard, and it's my wife's favorite plant for out around the pool on the outside of the screen. She loves it. She said, "Why don't you plant that all the way around? It looks so good." And that's lemongrass. And here, let me show a quick picture here. So lemongrass, it's an ornamental grass. It's a clump. It's green. It looks as attractive as any other ornamental grass. Your neighbors and the people with the HOA committees probably really can't tell the difference. But lemongrass, and April, have you ever made lemongrass tea before?
Absolutely. I just use lemongrass.
Oh,
I had some ladies over this afternoon, so I cut up an orange. I put a cinnamon stick, some nutmeg, whole, cloves, or allspice, sorry. And then I cut up some lemongrass that I've had drying in my kitchen, and I put it in a pot of water, boiled it, and it made the most amazing aroma in my house. But I make tea out of my lemongrass. I use it in recipes. I
mhm.
dry it often because it'll grow like a weed. I mean, this you can't
It
keep this stuff
does,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've never tried making tea out of it, but I know that by the end of summer, the thick stalks that it makes, if you cut them at ground level and peel off all the leafy part from the outside, you have kind of, it's about pencil size and stiff in the center. That's lemongrass. You can dice it up. It's, important in Thai cooking.
Yes.
Very fragrant, very tasty. I know that you can take the leaves and kind of tie them up in a bundle and steep them and make tea. So very edible, very tasty.
Absolutely. You know what a lot of people are doing, if anybody's a drinker, they're doing mocktails with a lot of herbs, and lemongrass is one of those you can do that with because it's so pungent. So you could do like a lemon drop mocktail with the lemongrass as well. Lemongrass to me is not much different than like a Florida sawgrass, like in terms of you touch it, you're slicing your fingers up a little bit, right? Like it's mini paper cuts, but it grows so prevalent. But it looks a lot like the grass you were talking about or that sawgrass. And it's also a deterrent for mosquitoes. So like, why wouldn't you have that in your landscape instead of something that's just ornamental? You can eat it, right? And it's a mosquito repellent. Why not?
And it's something that looks appropriate, and nobody is really going to notice or complain about it, I wouldn't think.
No, and I also today when those ladies are coming over, I have some sun hemp in my backyard, and so I cut some of the beautiful yellow flowers off. I cut some lemongrass, and I put it in a vase. And I don't buy flowers from the grocery store. I'm able to create these beautiful bouquets just with the flowers I have in my yard. So that lemongrass gives that nice frond look, palm frond kind of look in the background.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. And I know that peppermint is essential in the herb garden because it's required for mojitos. So
agreed. Agreed. My rabbits love mint too, and the lemongrass. They like them both. So at least I'm feeding my rabbit a little bit too.
We had a rabbit for a pet, and we had him for 10 years. I never knew they lived that long. Wow. I caught him in the backyard, and he was white with black spots. So I'm looking at him thinking, like, you're not a wild rabbit.
No.
It was like a couple weeks after Easter. So unfortunately, one of the neighbors had released him. So I very easily got him in a cage, and we made him a pet. And I had a big vegetable garden at the time, and all the stumps and the leaves and the trimmings and when you grow broccoli, it makes a great big stalk. You're only eating part of it, so you have a whole lot left over. And the rabbit's like, I'll take that.
Absolutely. Your carrot tops.
Vacuum that stuff up.
They do. They eat things that you don't want them to sometimes, But, lemongrass is a great one because it does really grow anywhere. So I've got it both in pots with really good soil that I got from a local guy. This stuff is full of worms. It's beautiful soil, and it grows really well. But I've also got it in ground where I didn't remediate my soil. And so it is a sandy kind of a soil. It's that Florida soil that you get, that wheat. My grass isn't grass. It's green, but it's not grass in my yard because it's sandy soil. So it grows just about anywhere. And in sunlight, it also doesn't mind shade. So, it's a very versatile plant.
Yeah, mine's in the ground in the native Spring Hill sandy soil and gets partial shade. And when it rains on a regular basis during the summer, it grows like a weed. It loves the heat, doesn't bother. It does freeze back every winter.
Yes,
but
it does.
In early spring, I cut it pretty much down to ground level, and it comes right back.
Yeah, and what I found with mine, and I suggested for anybody that's growing it, you need to keep up with it, right? Like you're going to want to keep harvesting it because the more you harvest it, the healthier the plant gets. Every time you make a cut in it, you're going to get 2 new shoots that come out, right? So definitely maintain it. That's really important because it will go crazy. It'll get pretty big if you don't keep it under control.
And looks like somebody else in the comments here is touching on another one of the things I was going to mention that you can do in an HOA, but they bring up a really something that I very commonly hear from HOA people. And in a lot of HOAs, they have pretty strict rules against no citrus trees, no fruit trees. They seem to have this idea that if you have fruit trees, now you're going to have rats. Well, sorry guys, but the bad news is I have rats in my yard. April, you have rats in your yard. Yeah. Everybody watching has rats and mice and other things in your yard. If you grow fruit trees and for some reason you don't pick the fruit, You just let it all fall on the ground. You just ignore it. You're gonna have well-fed rats.
Yeah.
You may encourage rats to come in from the neighbor's yard because you're laying out a nice big buffet for them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't put out a buffet, you're not going to be increasing any problems that you may have already had.
Absolutely.
So if you live near a wooded area or a field, or let's say maybe one of your neighbors has old tires and junked autos and problems like that in their backyard, that is going to impact the rat population.
Mm-hmm.
You having a fruit tree is not. And
It's not.
growing not really obvious fruit trees in an HOA is a really great idea. And there are some fruit trees that don't look really painfully obvious.
One of my favorites is that way.
Loquat.
Yes.
Loquat's a very attractive ornamental tree that does give you fruit, and you can make they have a loquat festival, I think, every March in Newport Richey. I've never been, but I had to look it up for somebody. Do you know there's like 100 different named varieties of loquats?
I did not know that.
I didn't know there were that many. There's a huge, so if you want to have different varieties of loquat, I'm not sure what the big difference is between them. You can do that. Native plums, native persimmons, they both grow naturally out in the forest and the woods in this area.
I got to tell you, I love my mulberry tree.
So before anybody asks, there's really no well here. Pecans, we're just a little bit too far south.
Yeah.
From Gainesville north, you can grow pecans, and they do grow pecans in Gainesville. You can buy them alongside of the road the right time of year. Here, they're short-lived. They don't do well. There's really no other. You could try macadamias if you want to be adventurous. Plant a macadamia tree. They can and will grow here.
Now, I love my mulberry tree. I have it right in my front yard. I don't have it as a tree, right? Like they can grow huge. They can grow as big as an oak or bigger, right? Mine, we keep trimmed, so it's never higher than the height of my house. But the berries are in the inside of a mulberry tree. And so really, I wouldn't think that anybody from the road would even know it's a mulberry tree. So I think you could trick your homeowners association with that one too. And the more we cut it back, the more berries we get. Like we probably get a harvest 6 or 7 times a year. The berries are absolutely delicious. If you've never had one, they're like a blackberry without the seed. And they're beautiful. And honestly, if you don't get to them, the birds will. So they don't have to be messy. Yeah, they love them. I have a 9-year-old. And so the greatest feeling in the world is him saying, Mom, can we go pick berries to go with my yogurt in the morning? You know, I sound a little extra. I promise you I'm not. But to have a 9-year-old that's like, let's go pick fresh berries off of our tree in our front yard is pretty awesome. And mine's an ever-bearing mulberry. And it propagates really easy. We cut the clippings when we cut it down, put them in some water, strip the leaves, up to maybe 3 or 4 at the top, put it in water for a few days with some root hormone, and then right into some soil. And within 5 weeks or so, we have roots growing and we now have trees that we can share with people. So definitely a mulberry, one of my favorite trees.
Word of advice, don't plant one where it hangs over your driveway and don't park your car under it. Because otherwise, you're going to be washing the car.
And wear gloves when you pick them, or you'll have a purple finger like myself.
Yeah. Oh my God! Here we have somebody who's obviously new to these kind of things because they ask, "Is there a place to go that has free classes?" Yes, there is. We have lots and lots of free classes that we've given over the last couple years. Even going back further than the beginning of COVID, a really good place to look for them is if you go to YouTube, look up Hernando County Government YouTube. So go to the little search box up in the corner, type in Hernando County Government, go to their YouTube channel, and they have it broken up into different playlists. There's a playlist for Hernando County Extension, which is me, and we record pretty much all the different teaching classes we give. So we have classes on growing sweet potatoes and strawberries and winter squash and cool season vegetables, spring vegetables, a little bit of everything there. And there's also a playlist for Florida-friendly landscaping that our Florida-friendly landscape coordinator, Lily Browning, before she retired and left us recently, she's got over 100 classes on there.
That's awesome.
Each one's about an hour long.
That's
So
wonderful.
that's a lot of classes. That's a lot of viewing that you can get a lot of really good information from. So go ahead and check out Hernando County Government's YouTube channel. And of course, our Facebook page, Hernando County Extension. Our short name is Hernando EXT. And all the different things that we've done, it all ends up on Facebook.
And our group too.
We put it out there.
Our group too, we post a lot of the classes the extension office offers, that are relevant to our group, which most of them are, I would say. I personally do a group called Homesteading 101. There is a charge for that. I think it's like $25 or something, but you walk away with all kinds of goodies. So it helps to pay for the goodies. But I've got another one I'll be scheduling in the next month or so, November. And then in December, we're planning a Homesteading 202. So for the people that have gone to the 101 and want to learn a little bit more in depth, but it's basically just a little nugget of all the different homesteading categories just to kind of introduce and empower people to start homesteading their own properties. So if you're part of the group, or if you're not in Hernando County and you go to our website, which is hernandocountyhomesteading.com, all of it's listed on there too, all the events that we're doing. And it's exciting.
And it really is a learning process. You get better from reading, from watching classes and watching videos, and going out there and doing it and making mistakes. You get it right.
Absolutely.
So we got a couple questions here. Will lemongrass grow in sandy soil? Yes, it does. Mine does. And like I said, it loves the summer heat. It grows like crazy in the summer, which is nice. Because a lot of people want to try growing their vegetables in their vegetable garden during the heat of summer, and most of those traditional things do not do well. They're going to burn up, they're going to get diseases, they're going to get insect pests. There are tropical vegetables. Do you ever try growing any tropical vegetables like cassava or yucca, the same name for the same thing? What are some other ones? Yard long beans. There's a lot of different Central American root crops.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is when we do our seed swaps, people come with all kinds of exotic and great stuff. So the yard long beans was one of them. And those things get really long.
So they do, and they're really good. They're not exactly like regular green beans, but they're good.
Yeah, and we did a purple bean too, a purple long bean that we had gotten, and they look crazy. They look like they should be for Halloween. They're like these long purple finger-looking things, and they don't grow. They didn't grow as prolific as I'd like. When I do green beans, because we have a big family, I need a lot of beans to feed the family in one serving, and they're like one here, one there. So this year I tried freezing them. So I'd get like 2 or 3 at a time. Put them in a freezer bag in the freezer, 2 or 3 more, and put them in there. And so eventually by the end of the season, I was able to get enough to do 1 crop. So next year, maybe I'll plant a few more seeds, and I'll have a little bit more plants. But yeah, I've had great success with those things for sure.
Yeah, I've grown them on and off for many years. I discovered them a long time ago, but they're Asian and they're tropical. So if you can find tropical things that you'll eat, you can grow them in the summer here. Unfortunately, a lot of people move here from up north, and they're still on the same schedule they were on up in Pennsylvania or New York or Michigan or something, and that doesn't work well down here.
Right. You said something, and it was very minor, and I might be the only one who caught it, but you said that you will eat, right? Those are the words you use, things that you will eat. And what I've learned on our homesteading journey is that I gotta let go of some traditional food habits that I have because there's so many things that I can grow either that are native or that grow really well in this climate that my family wasn't eating. So when you go to the grocery store, you notice that everybody's got the same things. There's not much variety really when you sit back and look at it. But when you're growing in your own yard, you can put as much variety as you want. So some of it might be starting a crop of something that you just never would have thought of growing, right? Seeing how it does. And if you don't like it, you don't plant it again. But you get to at least experiment with your family and get them to try new things, right? I mentioned longevity spinach earlier, and I know it's not a fruit like the one question, but it grows the most beautiful bush. It's so prolific. Like this, if you don't contain it, you're just going to have so much
Uh-huh.
spinach you don't know what to do with. And for anybody out there, raise your hands. I mean, I know you can't, but if you like spinach, the one nasty thing about spinach that people complain about, it shrivels down to like snot when you cook it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Longevity spinach doesn't do that. It keeps its form quite a bit. So it's a nice thick leaf. It's got a great flavor. Saute it with some onions and some peppers and some salt and pepper, maybe a little butter. And it is wonderful. It's like a mix between spinach and a mustard green, maybe. But again, not snotty, not slimy. And you could grow that in your
It's a
yard.
consistency thing, right?
Yeah, some people it is, with food. So, but it's a great plant. I'd say it's like this hidden gem that most people aren't aware of. Again, it can grow in a sandy soil or a remediated soil. And when I say remediation on soil, because there is a soil question in the comment, remediated soil doesn't have to be that you bring in all this topsoil and you got to wait years for it to, break down. I follow David the Good's soil remediation, which is like a layering method. I think he calls it lasagna. And he takes
Uh-huh.
cardboard as a weed barrier. So, not your printed cardboard with any colored printing, but a basic cardboard. And then on top of that, he layers it with a brown layer, which might be sticks and dried leaves. He does a green layer, which might be your grass clippings, or it could be your cuttings from some of your plants. And then he does a compost layer. I know I compost in my yard, so I'll use
So do
compost that
I.
you do too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll use a compost that maybe isn't totally ready, because I'm going to be putting it on top of and doing some soil remediation anyway. It's going to sit for a little bit. And then on top of that,
It breaks down so quickly that
so
it really
fast.
doesn't make a huge difference. It doesn't have
Absolutely.
to be perfectly finished.
It doesn't. It doesn't. So I'll put that layer and then I'll do some topsoil on top of it. Right. And what I do is when I'm planting my plants, I'm going to go down all the way through the cardboard so that the roots, these would be starters, so that the roots are going to go down into the ground. But all that nutrients for the top, once you start watering, is going to start building that soil. And then I finish it with some mulch because, the mulch helps keep
Yeah.
that moisture in. So that's my way of doing soil remediation. I learned again from David the Good. I got to give him credit, but it's worked wonders in my yard.
Yeah, everybody complains about the sandy soil in Florida. You can't grow anything. Compost. If you keep adding organic matter to your soil between, setting up the beds like you just described, making compost all the time out of all the different scraps and odds and ends, kitchen scraps.
Yes.
I can't believe how much kitchen scraps we generate until you save it and take it outside and throw it in the compost. Shredded paper,
Yeah.
everything. And then if you put some kind of organic mulch, just grass clippings, ground up leaves, pine needles on your garden when the plants are up and growing. If you keep adding organic matter, you'll eventually get the upper hand. You'll have beautiful soil.
And, I've been very fortunate. So I have an 18-year-old that works at a coffee shop. And so
That helps.
she brings me buckets of, the coffee grounds and even the liners that they use, eggshells, any of the green matter. And she brings a ton of it to me. And so I get to throw that in my compost. But if you have a coffee shop near you, they'd be happy to get rid of their grounds. And so a lot of times if you bring the bucket, they'll fill it and you pick it up when it's ready. It's a great way to kind of help with their waste situation as well.
Yeah, great way to recycle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we got some questions here. Corey, who, like I said, was one of our regular listeners on Thursday morning, says, yes, there is a Loquat festival in Newport Richey, and Loquat varieties have different size fruit with fewer seeds and different fruiting time. So it's spread out a little bit more over the season. Yeah, I mean, I've tried loquats before, but I've never tried enough of them where I notice differences between the varieties. And here's a question. Since you've done seed swaps before with your organization,
Yeah.
seed swaps, how do you harvest the seeds?
I think Is it so the seed swaps advise on how to harvest seeds? Okay. So generally what the seed swap is people will show up with seeds that they've collected that maybe they're not using or they just want to share. We have a long table and all those seeds go out onto the table in different categories to make it easy to find. And so it's basically come and bring your seeds and take seeds with you, right? And so it's a swap, truly a swap. But a lot of times what happens is people have extra plants or they might want to set up a booth. Maybe they have a specialty, like we have a couple that does aquaponics. So they set up a little booth with pictures of their setup. And they were able to sit down with the people that came to the seed swap to talk about their expertise. So even though it's not really like a class teaching you how to harvest seeds, there's lots of people there to pick their brains. So the idea is generating a community of people that want to share information. And it's just a location that they can do that. Our Facebook group definitely is a place where you can get advice on harvesting seeds. People are sharing that all the time, for sure.
Yeah, and seed swaps are always a fun social event also.
Absolutely.
So do you have your next one planned? We have somebody asking where the seed swap's located.
So we don't have the next one planned. We're thinking maybe in December to get ready for that spring season. December, maybe January. So we don't have it planned yet, but if you follow the Hernando County Homesteading Facebook group, if you're in Hernando, or go to the website, which is just www.hernandocountyhomesteading.com, all the events get posted on there. And if you sign up, you'll get the notifications when we put new events. We've done 3 so far in the community, and they've all been really successful. First one was like at marker 48. We had 300 people show up. It was great. Dr. Lester was there. We met for the first time.
I was there. I had a great time.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So beer and seeds, you got to love that. And then we also did one at a local People Helping People, which is a nonprofit. So it was indoors. So it was a little bit more intimate. I'm sorry. So we've done 2 so far. And we had about 175, 150 people show up to that one as well. So it was a great event. We did lots of giveaways and things. But if you want to get seeds, you can also go to one of the 3 seed boxes that we have permanently in the community. So one of them is at Jericho Road Thrift Store, right off County Line Road. It's by their front register, and it gets filled consistently. We have one at Bread Box Bakery, which is in Brooksville. So it's downtown Brooksville, again, filled regularly. And then our third one, why am I spacing out? Oh, the third one is at the HPH Hospice location on State Road 50. They have a planting program for the kids that are grieving. And so we have a seed box there that we fill, and you can use seeds there as well. So
that's great. So see, nobody has an excuse to not go out and plant a garden, especially the time of the year it is.
Absolutely.
And even if you live in a homeowners association, I think the only thing that I thought of that hasn't come up so far is trying to find plants that are attractive as they grow and edible also. Yes. There's a lot of varieties of peppers and eggplants. As a matter of fact, with peppers, there's actually ornamental varieties of hot peppers. You can still eat the peppers. Mm-hmm. They may be really, really hot. So be advised, but you can still eat the peppers, and the plant looks very attractive while it has the peppers on them. The peppers turn red. You can get eggplants. Eggplants aren't just like old-fashioned purple. They're white, they're lavender, they're striped. So something like that, if you get creative, you can tuck into that front flower bed, and probably nobody's really going to notice that you're actually trying to grow your own food there.
Absolutely. Another one that I love is ginger and turmeric. You can grow those. They're beautiful. Something to think about too is, people think of landscaping as a permanent fixture, right? But gardening is not a permanent fixture because obviously you're planting it, you're growing it to eat it, and then you have to replant it. So you do have to be a little bit more methodical when you're planting to grow edibles because they're going to be seasonal sometimes, right? Or sometimes they're going to die back and then you have to wait for them to grow again before you can get the food from it. So you want to make sure when you're putting it in your landscape, it's fulfilling the needs of your HOA all the time, right? Or you're rotating those crops to make sure that you don't have empty flower beds that they're going to now write you a letter and try to take your home. That was a joke. But
because And I've had to work with a lot of different HOAs, and they really do run the entire spectrum from
Yeah.
very hands off, not many people involved with it, rules not particularly enforced, all the way up to lists of rules and committees, and people drive around, and the 10 minutes after you do something wrong, you're going to get a notice on your front door. So they really do run the gamut. But homeowners associations, they do have rules. If you want to change the rules, if you just get involved in it, because if you're a homeowner there, it's your association also. You should go to the meetings. You should get involved. You should be on one of the committees that looks at people's yards to figure, April, is your yard up to snuff or not? You don't live in an HOA, do you?
I do not, thankfully. Yeah.
Okay, neither do I. But
I have in my past. I have. But, again, it's just being creative. Maybe meeting other gardeners and seeing, touring their gardens and seeing what the plants look like when they finally do start to grow or at different stages. So you know how it can fit into your landscape. Gardening is planning. Nobody can just take seeds, ground them up in your hand and throw them out and think that everything's going to grow. You definitely have to plan for it. So now it's just, okay, what can I get away with in my front yard? And I encourage people not to just grow food. You need pollinator plants as well, right? So you do need some of those ornamentals, those florals, or like something I've done, I've gotten creative with my florals, and I make sure it's either something that's going to help build my soil, like that sun hemp that I talked about, or a Mexican. Oh, don't say this in front of Bill Lester because I think it's an invasive, but Mexican sunflower, love it. It's beautiful. It's bringing carbon into my soil.
Mexican petunia is a bad invasive. Mexican sunflower is not that bad.
Okay. So I didn't hurt your feelings. I'm glad. We don't want invasive plants. Also, my cranberry hibiscus, lots of hibiscuses you can grow, and the flowers are edible. They make amazing teas. So you're not going to feed your family on it, but it's definitely something that will attract those pollinators and help your garden your garden plants grow. And also you can use them for other things.
Yeah, I know people at UF working with Roselle to turn it into more of a commercial cash crop, and they're working with growers to start growing it on a small basis.
Absolutely.
And very, very easy and very pretty too. They get very, very beautiful hibiscus flowers because it is a type of hibiscus.
Yeah. And, some seasonal things that I've also grown, because I know, we've only got probably 13 minutes left, so I don't want to leave some of this stuff out, but cabbages, lots of different cabbages are actually really beautiful when they start growing. They are that seasonal crop. So you do want to plan on what you're going to put in its place. Make sure that they definitely coordinate with each other. But I love growing cabbages. You can grow them in different colors. They grow a beautiful head on them, which looks attractive. Lots of different kinds of parsleys and different organic spinaches, like ciso spinach is really beautiful. Different texture than the longevity, but it grows really, really well. I'm trying to think of some others sweet potatoes. You and I talked about sweet potatoes a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
The sweet potato vine is actually beautiful. Easy to grow. It's beautiful. So if you have one bed specifically that you're going to grow sweet potatoes in, you're going to get this vining, gorgeous plant with leaves that are shaped like hearts almost, greenish purple leaves. They don't require a ton of maintenance or a ton of water. And then once a year, you're going to pull them all up and get your crop and plant something else in its place. So I think regular white potatoes and sweet potatoes both have beautiful plants that you can get away with. And they last. How long did you grow your sweet potatoes, Dr. Lester?
I gave them a good 100 days.
Exactly.
And I didn't get them all planted at the same time. It took me a while to get them all in the ground. But the first ones that have been in the ground for probably over 100 days at this point, I figured, well, it's just about November 1st. That's what I was aiming to start digging them up. So I started at one end. I'm going to keep working towards the other end. But if I end up with too many that we're not going to be able to eat them all fresh, I'll can them.
Yeah. And so I did
very well.
I stored mine, they can last for a couple months if you don't wash them and you keep them. We keep them in a brown box inside in our laundry room. So it's pretty, climate controlled. I'm trying something different. I'll have to let you know my experiment, but I dug underneath. So I had them in a raised kind of a bed and really great loose soil. So I did really well with them. But instead of pulling the plant up, I went underneath, got the potatoes, and left them to reroot. So I'm going to see if I can get a second crop out of my sweet potatoes or not. We'll see. It's an experiment.
Sweet potatoes are definitely a warm season slash hot season kind of vegetable.
Yeah.
When I dig mine up, I always end up digging up a bunch that are really small,
Yeah.
sometimes really small. I'm thinking I save them in the garage until next spring. When they get to the point where they're starting to sprout on their own, I put them into pots and get them up and growing. That way I have my never ending supply of shoots to plant next summer.
Love that.
I started this like a year or two ago. I went to the grocery store. I bought 3 sweet potatoes. So permanent sweet potatoes from an investment of 3 sweet potatoes at Winn-Dixie.
Nice. That's wonderful. Something
Here.
else we didn't talk about was chives. I see it in your picture, but onions and chives, they're and even asparagus fern, it gets a little wild. So, but all those things are things that you can continuously harvest from. Like nothing better than making dinner, going out in the yard to cut your herbs so you have fresh herbs for your dinner or fresh scallions or whatever that might be.
Here, I'm going to show a picture that Corey sent of his yard. We can look into my email here, but these are some pictures of his front yard. Mm-hmm. And that looks like really big lemongrass up against the house there. And if we scroll down, he has a spider out. Hopefully it's just for Halloween. Hopefully that's not year round.
Is that African blue basil?
Yeah, all kinds of herbs there.
And rosemary, maybe?
A mixture of herbs.
Yeah.
And I tell you, if you grow a lot of herbs, you can dry them. You can freeze them in olive oil. Mm-hmm. There's a lot you can do with them.
Absolutely. I think every weekend I go out and pick herbs and then I dry them behind my sink in my kitchen. And I've gotten little glass containers and I keep them in there. They're great gifts too. If you've got something that's really producing well, dry the herb, ground it up. I use a coffee grinder to grind it up really fine. And then put them in those glass containers, put a label on it, like start gifting those kind of special gifts to people and they'll really appreciate it.
You can buy a case, it must have been at least 24 little glass spice jars from Amazon.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, I've grown a lot of different hot peppers and I'll dry them. So put them in the dehydrator, dry them, grind them up into a fine powder. I'm never without hot peppers. I make an Asian food. I got Asian hot peppers. And you know how much that stuff costs at the grocery store?
And you don't know what you're getting. You don't know the concentration of the herb you're getting, what fillers they're putting in. So, and there's nothing like fresh herbs for sure.
And sometimes it's funny. About a year or so ago, there must have been a worldwide thyme shortage. It was either thyme or sage. One of them I looked at the grocery store, and the cheap brand was like $4 for a little jar.
Mm-hmm.
I could grow this myself.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Do we have other questions on there? It's hard for me to see.
Yeah, Corey said it's looking a little scruffy now. He's going to switch to cool season stuff. But yeah, obviously from the looks of the house, he lives in a HOA type subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
And he has figured out a way to squeeze in some edible things. And I tell you what, it starts with just growing 1 or 2 little things. If you're successful with that, start a 3rd one. Start a 4th one. Mm-hmm. Don't start with trying to grow the hardest chanterelle melons or something really difficult. Start with radishes.
Absolutely.
Grow radishes.
Absolutely.
It only takes 30 days. You can grow radishes.
Yeah.
And then try growing lettuce and just take it one step at a time. And I know for me, I don't have to go out and buy hot peppers or hot pepper powder or anything. I'm pretty well set with that.
Absolutely.
And if I do a year's worth of sweet potatoes, that's 2 things. This spring, if I can grow a whole boatload of green beans and yellow beans and pole beans for a year, that's 3 things. Mm-hmm. And that's how you become more sustainable bit by bit.
Absolutely. I mean, something I've done is knowing that you've got to be versatile. So I've got raised bed garden, I have an in-ground garden, and then I talk about food forests a lot because I really believe in that. So the concept of food forest is multiple layers, creating a forest experience basically for your food. And so the science behind it makes a lot of sense. We've been pretty successful with it. And I think you could do some of those in your front yards too, growing miniature food forests. They can be combined with a barrier around them. That's how I've got mine, because I do like things to look pretty. I don't just like a bunch of things thrown. And so like in one of my food forests, I've got a couple banana trees, I have a fig tree, I've got a key lime, an orange, longevity spinach, lots of onion, asparagus, sweet potato. And so I'm always building with the idea that in a food forest, I'm not going to have to weed it very much because it's going to take care of itself. It's creating its own ecosystem. I'm going to add mulch to the top, right? I'm going to drop things from the food forest as they die, and then I'm going to add mulch on top of it, always remediating that soil and building that environment. But I think you can do that in the front yard too, and really, again, be creative with that canopy. You plant a sweet potato vine or a passion fruit vine that's going to grow up the tree, right? So it creates another layer. But food forest is definitely something that I think is discounted, and I can see that really growing quite a bit in front yards too.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of interest in that. And I see one last question at the very end here. Is there a way to store different types of lettuce? Generally, no. Can't can it. You can't freeze it. Spinach you can freeze. Kale you can freeze. I'm not sure how you don't want to keep it in the freezer for 5 years. I've never, you can freeze them, but lettuces, unfortunately, you need to eat fresh. So what you do, they grow here in Central Florida during the winter. Start in maybe October 1st, plant some lettuce, but only plant a little bit, then plant a couple weeks later, plant a bit more, a couple weeks later, a bit more. That way, during the entire winter, you have a steady supply of fresh lettuce to enjoy.
Absolutely.
And a lot of things are seasonal. You need to enjoy them while you can, knowing that you can't grow lettuce in your backyard in June, July, and August.
Unless you do aquaponics, right? And if you've got a good aquaponic system in a greenhouse, you can grow it all year. But yeah, that staggering method's the best way, really. Or get a rabbit, because if someone just get rabbits. Yeah, get a rabbit, and you can feed them their greens with that extra lettuce, and they just will love you for it.
They recycle it for you, and they give you black gold, basically, in exchange.
True.
Okay, guys. Wow, looks like it's about that time. Hope everybody enjoyed. If everybody, and especially people who may be watching a recording of this, if you felt that you got something out of this, that this is worthwhile, go ahead and please leave us a comment. Let me go ahead and I think maybe somebody doesn't want us to leave this evening.
Or we have a hater. There's no haters in gardening. There's no haters in gardening.
Feel free to shoot me an email, and if you'd like us to come back on and do more of these on different topics, I'm more than happy to.
Absolutely.
I know April's more than happy to also.
Absolutely. And you can reach me on Facebook on the homesteading group, or again on the website, and I would love to connect. If you are in Hernando County, I talked about the longevity spinach. I have tons of starters. I would love to hook up with you and get you one so I can get you going. But just reach out to me on the website or the page.
Yeah, great group to hook up with. It puts the social back in social media, I guess, and great way to learn, great way to trade different various vegetables. Because I know when I start vegetables, I really like to hedge my bets. Thinking, well, if I plant 100 seeds, at least 10 are going to come up, right? Sometimes 99 of them come up, and I'm like, what am I going to do with the rest? So It happens to all of us.
It does. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And like I said, we'll have to get together and do this more often. So see, no hate at all there.
Great.
And a couple of thank yous. And a few people loved it. So shoot me an email or keep putting in the comments. And anybody watching the recording of this, feel free to go ahead and put something in the comments about maybe a topic you'd like us to talk about, bring in an expert. I can have more than just 2 people on here. We can have a bunch of people on here for panel discussion. So let us know what you want to learn about, and we'll put something together.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Let me go ahead and turn this on. April, if you want to hold on there for a moment while I go ahead and shut this off. Everybody have a great evening, and I had a great time, and we'll see you all again next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.